What's up, my lore legends, acolytes, and mercenaries from around the vast and expansive galaxy? And welcome to our special video today, where we shall be conducting our first ever lore compilation on the mysterious, enigmatic, and nigh omnipotent dark side entity Emperor Vitiate, Tenebrae, Valkorion, and the original Sith Emperor. This is personally one of my favourite characters, not just in Star Wars but in all of fiction, due to his tremendous, nigh omnipotent power, nigh unopposed dark side mastery, even exceeding Palpatine and Nihilus's. His power was on par with Palpatine's, even exceeding it in my eyes, and on par with Nihilus. However, he did fall short to the Lord of Hunger. Well, my friends, be sure to put this on possibly while you are doing some sort of menial laborious task, possibly while you're watching a Netflix series, cooking, working, or whatever have you. Now, my friends, let us proceed with the lore compilation on the Sith Emperor. Darth Vitiate, otherwise known as the Eternal Emperor Valkorion, the Sith Emperor, and Tenebrae, was one of the most powerful Sith Lords and dark side beings to ever be produced by the dark side itself. Vitiate utilized the ability of essence transfer to a degree higher than even Darth Andedu, Darth Sidious, and any other being in galactic history who manipulated this dark technique. Using this technique, he managed to live for 1,500 years and manipulate galactic affairs from the age of 6, where he snapped his adopted stepfather's neck using telekinesis and gorged himself on the pain and suffering he felt from his mother before finally ending her life too. The Sith Emperor led a dominating, and utterly crippling empire with beings such as Darth Malgus, Lord Agrau, Lord Scourge, and many other beings such as even the famed Sith Lord, Lord Adras, leading brutal campaigns against their arch enemy, the Jedi, for nearly 3 decades. During this time, Vitiate was considered public enemy number 1 for the wider galaxy, with the Jedi attempting many times and failing almost every time except for one, where during the end of the war, the hero of Typhon, a Jedi praised and renowned as being the greatest of his age, and prophesied by Lord Scourge, the Emperor's hand, to be the one Jedi that would kill the Sith Emperor and defeat him after his millennia of waiting for his invasion on the Jedi. However, many of us know that the most famous of Vitiate's foes is the prodigal knight himself. In Revan, Revan's story spans 3 centuries and beyond, with his story going from a Jedi to a Sith to a Jedi to something more entirely. His story spans centuries, being one of the only Jedi to ever fall in love and sire child and offspring. His lineage would eventually lead into the renowned Jedi Grandmaster Satele Shan, who would later become the only ever Grandmaster and youngest Grandmaster in all of galactic history at that time. Well, my friends, today we are going to be scanning our archives, excavating the ancient tombs in search of lost databanks and holocrons, in order to uncover what Revan's final attempt against the Sith Emperor, the most pure and malevolent force of evil in the entire galaxy at the time, was. What Revan and his allies Meetra Surik and Lord Scourge did to attempt to defeat the Emperor. This all takes place in Legend continuity. In the event of the Revan novel, a highly esteemed novel I very impressed and implore you to read, as I've seen few novels such as the Darth Plagueis and Darth Bane novels that can match up to the potency and beauty of this novel. They are the way, acolytes. The last thing you must do to match the might of Emperor Vitiate is strike down the subscribe button, ascend to the rank of Master, and fulfill your destiny. Now, let's begin. The assassination attempt on the Sith Emperor Vitiate was a mission carried out by Jedi Masters Revan and Meetra Surik, with help from the treacherous Sith Lord Scourge and his personal droid T3M4 to eliminate the Sith Emperor, the Dark Lord of the Sith, and the Emperor of the reconstituted Sith Empire. In 3950 BBY, Meetra Surik came to the world of Dromund Kaas, the newly formed capital world of the reconstituted Sith Empire, looking for Revan. She found him a prisoner of the Dark Council member and female Sith Lord Darth Nihilus, a member of the renowned Dark Council. She also came into contact with Scourge, a Sith Lord who came to believe that the Emperor might likely bring about the destruction of the Sith species by conducting a ritual that would absorb the entirety of the galaxy's force energy, if not the entire galaxy, bringing it to an end. With that in mind, Scourge begrudgingly agreed to work with Zurich to help free Revan, believing that Revan was the only being in the galaxy at that time strong enough to defeat the Sith Emperor. Scourge appeared to the Sith Emperor and informed him of Nihilus' treachery against him, in collusion with some of the other members of the Council, attempting to assassinate and kill him. The Emperor dealt with this conspiracy theory by massacring the entire Council, sparking off a begrudging series of riots throughout the planet and among the Sith people. Revan, Zurich, and Scourge took advantage of the diversion provided by the riots to infiltrate the Imperial Citadel, the capital of the Imperial City on German Cast, and try to assassinate the Dark Lord. I expected better from you, Lord Scourge. He has seen the depths of your evil. He stands with us now. Then he will die with you as well. We can't defeat all three of us. United, we are stronger than even you. That remains to be seen. Vitiate and Revan bartered during the events of their duel. As the group eventually approached the Citadel, they were greeted by half a dozen Imperial Guardsmen. However, Lord Scourge, using the Force, persuaded them to let the group in and take them to just outside the throne room of the Emperor. Right before the Guardsmen were to open the doors to the room and let them inside, Captain Yari, the head of the guard, appeared and told them that only Scourge could accompany the Emperor inside. When one of the Guardsmen pulled Revan away from the doors, Yari saw his distinctive mask and realized who this renowned Jedi was. Revan stunned the soldier, who grabbed him with a kick, enabling his droid T3M4 to shoot him with his blaster. At the same time, Zurich took on two of the Guardsmen while Scourge fought viciously with Yari. When an alarm was triggered by one of the other soldiers, Revan telekinetically threw the doors wide open. When one of the Guardsmen attempted to stop Revan from entering the throne room and facing his rival, he leapt and somersaulted over the soldier, then tried to send him flying with the Force, only staggering him half a step because he was able to draw on the Emperor's power to augment himself. He fainted with a high chop, and when the guard went to protect his legs, Revan slashed him and bisected his throat. Revan and T3M4 entered the room, while Zurich and Scourge battled the remaining guardsmen outside. When a half a dozen more guards appeared, Revan ripped the stone archway from above them free with the Force, causing them to fall back, enabling Revan and the others to enter the throne room and confront the Emperor without interruption, with T3M4 closing and sealing the doors for no interruption, while Revan engaged the Emperor in a vicious Force clash, and Zurich and Scourge held off Yari and her remaining guards. Scourge slew one guard with a slash to the chest. He then beheaded Yari using his superior power, dark side affinity, and swordsmanship, while Zurich took out both her opponents. While that was occurring, the Emperor sent Revan flying backwards with a telekinetic push, emphasizing his power by not even raising his hand in a hand gesture as commonly needed for Force use. Then the Emperor tried once again to bring Revan under his control, as he had done many years earlier by converting Revan to the dark side alongside his friend Darth Malak. However, Revan opened himself to the light and the dark side of the Force, funneling through him like twin rivers, and released the Force energy in its purest indefinite form, sending the Sith Emperor flying backwards, unquestionably one of the most horrific wounds ever dealt to the Sith Emperor. Revan charged towards him. However, he sent a bolt of crackling Force energy and lightning, which Revan blocked with his lightsaber. The Emperor then sent 3 more bolts. The first Revan deflected, the second he evaded, and the last he batted back towards the Emperor itself, striking him in the chest. Enraged, the Emperor unleashed a barrage and storm of Force lightning, which Revan, drawing on his arrogance from prior where he'd been able to contain Darth Nihilus, the Dark Council member's Force lightning, tried to draw in and contain it, using 2 to minutes. But as the book states, the Emperor was infinite more times powerful than Darth Nihilus ever was, and Revan was severely charred and burned, his mask even melting to his face in the end. T3M4 came to Revan's aid by shooting a jet of flame from its flamethrower, which caused the Emperor to stop blasting Revan with lightning in order to cocoon himself in dark energy. The Emperor retaliated by thinking of the droid being blasted into shrapnel, and to Revan's horror, it actually happened, with the droid exploding, as if on command. He then picked up Revan's lightsaber and planned to impale it with him. However, Suric saves him by throwing her own saber and knocking it out of the Emperor's hands. Scourge then rushed forward to stand behind the two Jedi and Vitiate. Suddenly, Scourge received a horrific Force vision of all the various possible futures and outcomes of the fight. In some, Revan won and defeated the Emperor, but in others, and the vast majority of them, the Emperor was triumphant over them. Scourge didn't know which of the futures and possible timelines were most likely to occur, or what he could do to help bring all of them about. All of a sudden, he saw a vision that gave him hope. A vision and foresight of the Emperor lying dead at the feet of a powerful Jedi. But neither one was Revan nor Suric, and he came to believe he knew what he had to do to help bring that event about. He suddenly moved behind Suric, impaling her through his shoulder blades, bewildering and raging Revan with his betrayal and allowing the Emperor to hit him with another blast of Force lightning, bringing him into submission. When the Emperor told Scourge to explain himself and his actions against the Imperials, he lied and stated that the two Jedi were working with Darth Nihilus. The Emperor then ordered Scourge to finish off Revan. Scourge saw Revan was badly wounded and thought that he would die anyway, but when he went to try to kill Revan, the Emperor stopped him, saying he had proved himself regardless of whatever he did to Revan. The Emperor then continuously drained the energy and tried to pry inside the mind of the Jedi to find information about the Jedi and Republic strategies. Revan was then imprisoned and kept in a state of suspended animation, while the Emperor for hundreds of years, 300 to be exact, 3 entire centuries, fed and gnawed at his defences, gnawing and feeding on his mind to gain information about the Republic military and its power. For his seeming loyalty, which was actually just a ruse to the Sith Emperor, Scourge was made the first Emperor's Wrath, and given the gift of immortality by this Emperor in an ancient Sith alchemic ritual. Suric refused to pass on to the Force, however, but stayed behind as a spirit and supported Revan and kept him satiated with her own Force energy, giving Revan the strength to not only resist the Emperor's attempts to obtain his knowledge, but also slightly influence the Sith Emperor's thoughts and exploit his fear of death to get him to postpone his invasion of the Republic as long as humanly possible. Also, Scourge vowed that he would use his immortality and position by coming to know that the Emperor's strength and vulnerabilities, so that when the future Jedi in his vision came along, he would be able to assist them in bringing about the Emperor's final demise, as been his goal all along. Well, my friends, this is where we part ways. I hope you have enjoyed excavating this too, and scouring the Valley of the Dark Lords for this new segment of information. Goodbye, acolytes. I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away, and be sure to cocoon yourself with the Force before confronting the Sith Emperor. Greetings, acolytes of the Force and students of this vast and variously expansive galaxy, and welcome back to another installment in our Versus series in our archives and databases. I have been expecting you. Just before we begin, I would like you to note and comment down below whether you are liking the Versus series, a weekly installment I install every single week, depicting 2 characters, light and maybe dark, possibly too dark, too light, or maybe just 2 mercenaries or soldiers of the galaxy, and pitting them against one another on a deserted battlefield. Inform me in the comment section down below if you're enjoying this weekly installment and usurpation, and tell me if you would like me to continue this series, and list below any verses that you desire to see covered here on our databases and installed into our vast archives. Without the way, acolytes, let's begin. The 2 contenders we have for the title of the most powerful Sith Lord today are, in my opinion, the top 2 most powerful Sith of all time. One of them being the tyrannical and oppressive Sith Emperor of the Old Republic, obviously inspired by Palpatine. Darth Vitiate, Valkorian, Tenebrae, and the Sith Emperor was a Force user who accomplished what many Force users could not in the time he was 13 years old in their entire lifetimes. And then the other contender we have for the top spot is the Lord of Hunger, Darth Nihilus. Both of these Sith produced and projected a tyrannical and dark regime across the Star Wars galaxy, imposing their dark will and upon the entirety of the galaxy at hand, and nearly succeeded in dominating it, taking it out of the hands of both the Jedi and the Sith at one point in history. Both these Sith had a namesake and were immensely powerful on the dark side of the Force, with their only rival being Darth Sidious, and possibly the preeminent Sith Lord after Darth Sidious, Darth Krayt, also known as Asherad Het. These two Sith Lords both existed about the same era in Star Wars, and while one lived for a lot longer and had incredible feats, as well as the other, they both imposed a will as terrifying, brutal, and savage as each other. So, today, acolytes and students of the Force and slaves of the dark side, we shall assess who truly prevails as the most powerful Sith Lord in all of galactic history: the immortal Emperor of the Cool Vitiate, or the Lord of Hunger and the leader of the Sith Triumvirate, Darth Nihilus. Before we begin, I implore you, force drain the subscribe button and use Essence Transfer to hit the notification bell. Using this will alert you to any new Star Wars installments I have produced on this channel. And with that out of the way, acolytes, let's begin. Starting off with arguably the more famous of these two Sith, we have Emperor Vitiate, stating, is an official quote from the Old Republic game: "My life spans millennia. Legions have risen to test me. My ascendance is inevitable. A day, a year, a millennium, it matters not. I hold the patience of stone and the will of stars. Your striving is insignificant. Let your death be the same." These words were exchanged between the Sith Emperor Vitiate, in my opinion, his weakest point of power, and the hero of Tython, a Jedi renowned to be the greatest of his age, Tenebrae, known to his old Sith Empire as Vitiate, his reconstituted Sith Empire as the Sith Emperor, and his eternal empire as Valkorion, was an ancient, immensely powerful dark-side energy of enormous power who manipulated galactic affairs for 1,500 years. Born in the year 5113 BBY as the illegitimate son of the Sith Lord Drummoth and a poor father woman, Tenebrae, at the age of just 6 years old, was able to telekinetically use the Force to snap his adoptive stepfather's neck, and then later went on to torture his own mother for months, bathing in her suffering and indulging himself on the dark side energies that emanated from her torture before finally killing her. Vitiate then led a tyrannical regime across his home world of Medadras, the same world he would one day rule and rename to Nathema. Vitiate, by the age of 13, had held public executions, bolstering his power on the dark side and augmenting his immense dark side persona by feeding and gorging himself on the suffering of others. Vitiate, at the age of 13, met with Lord Drummoth, his biological father, and then proceeded to strip the man of his sanity and then strip him of the Force entirely. He then encased his spirit within the Sith Citadel for a millennia of torment, where Vitiate would continue to sustain himself on his father's immense power. Even as a child, the Sith Emperor possessed immense and nigh unparalleled strength in the Force. His abilities began to manifest themselves at the age of 6. As his powers grew, Tenebrae continued to gorge and sustain himself on the fear and suffering of those he tortured in drawn-out public executions. When he confronted his real father, he was able to effortlessly beat him. Tenebrae's power at the age of 13 was great enough that he ventured to the Sith holy world of Droman Cast, the location of the Sith Empire and its capital, and was acknowledged by Marka Ragnos as possibly being, at the time, still inferior, but a rival to him. This means that at the age of 13, his Force powers and proficiency in the dark side was greater than nearly any Sith of all time. He granted him the title of Lord Vitiate. Vitiate soon garnered and gained a reputation as a scholar, spending much of the next century studying the in-depth secrets of the dark side and Sith sorcery and immense lore, becoming one of the most powerful practitioners of both Sith magic and alchemy throughout history, devising complex rituals to warp reality and life itself. Another one of Vitiate's specialties was in the domination of his opponent's minds, being more skilled in this ability than, in my opinion, any other Sith Lord in all of history, even Emperor Palpatine from the Dark Empire comic series. Vitiate most notably employed this strategy when he dominated the will and mind of Darth Revan and Darth Malak, two of the most powerful Jedi and later Sith that we know today. Darth Revan was no mere acolyte either, being able to unify both sides of the Force and wield it in union. Darth Revan was considered the predecessor as the chosen one to Anakin Skywalker. He then used their combined might to perform the most complex ritual of Sith magic ever performed, gorging himself on the power of 8,000 fellow Sith and all life on Thema, ripping the Force from the entire planet and absorbing the combined life force of every living thing on the surface besides himself. Lord Scourge, the first Emperor's hand, suspected the Emperor had not only absorbed the lives of those who had died in that ritual, but was in fact feeding off their spirits to sustain his own body throughout the centuries that followed, and his spirit. This feat can only be comparable to that of Darth Nihilus, who was effortlessly able to drain planets of their entire life, but more on that later. As Emperor, he spent much of his rule experimenting and delving even further within dark side lore, discovering and immersing himself in many lost techniques and increasing his immense and unmatched power even more. While his body was harmed by the ravaging effects of the dark side, consuming his body and physical form over time, the technique of essence transference, created by the Darth and Dedu, a very powerful Sith, allowed him to transfer and move his consciousness between vessels, which had been made immortal as a result of the ritual on Thema, between bodies, and sustain his life indefinitely by combining various Force techniques. The Emperor was also able to imbue and embed portions of his own consciousness into infants, transforming those children of the Emperor into extensions of his own will and mind. Vitiate also had the ability to grant and bestow upon non-Force sensitives Force sensitivity. As shown, when he imbued portions of his consciousness into infants, he was able to bypass their Force sensitivity and make them the ultimate covert operatives, and further possess them like puppets. The Emperor's rituals conducted on his capital world of Dromund Kaas during his tenure as the Sith Emperor warped the planet's very atmosphere, creating perpetual vast lightning storms of incredible danger. He became vastly skilled in telekinesis and defensive techniques. He could conjure immensely powerful Force barriers, even able to block the Hero of Titan's lightsaber strikes, T3M4's flamethrower, Revan's personal droid, and even stronger lightsaber blows from his son Arcan, and could conjure protection bubbles to protect himself from oncoming Force attacks and cocoon him from flamethrowers. His telekinetic power was so great that he could effortlessly perform great telekinetic feats without utilizing the common need for hand gestures, as commonly needed and required with Force wielders. He was able, in the Revan novel, to send the extremely powerful Revan, at his peak of power, flying through the air with barely an effort, and he effortlessly disintegrated T3M4 with just a mere thought, like he had done with his stepfather many years prior by blasting the asteroid into shrapnel. The Emperor was also extremely proficient in the use of Force lightning, utilizing it in the form of cackling and conniving bolts of energy, and even being proficient enough to use single-handedly summon Force storms, strong enough to overwhelm Revan's immense tutor-minutes and severely injure him. Before this, Revan had overwhelmed Darth Nihilus, a very powerful Dark Council member and Sith lady, with tutor-minutes and launched her Force lightning back at her. However, Lord Scourge had stated that despite Revan's attempt to harness Vitiate's Force lightning with tutor-minutes, he was infinitely more powerful than Darth Nihilus had ever been. The Emperor was also able to summon Sith magic, which enabled him to create physical doppelgangers and duplications of himself to overwhelm the Hero of Titan in lightsaber combat. When necessary, the Emperor would utilize his crimson-bladed lightsaber in combat, and displayed adequate proficiency and a mercenary in with it, despite being so powerful that he rarely used it. During his time as the Eternal Empire Valkorian, he was able to effortlessly dominate and get rid of his son Arcan, an immensely powerful being. He was able to dominate the will and power of Arcan, Valen, and the Outlander, two of the most powerful Star Wars characters to ever live. Valen and the Outlander are commonly regarded as two of the most powerful characters in all of Star Wars lore. He was able to use a barrage of Force lightning, more akin to a Force storm than anything else, in order to instantly kill Darth Maul. Darth Maul was the longest reigning Dark Council member in all of Star Wars, and commonly regarded as, alongside Darth Malgus, the most powerful Dark Council member, with his feats and powers being comparable, however slightly lessened, to that of Darth Maul, an exceptionally powerful Sith Lord and my favourite character and Sith in all of Star Wars. Vitiate's powers were so great that in his Echoes of Oblivion during his final death, it took the combined might of all the beings he had wronged over the past. Revan, Mitra Surik, Lord Scourge, the Outlander, the Hero of Typhon, joined together with the Outlander and Grand Master Satele Shan, a descendant of Revan and Bastila Shan, within Shan's mindscape to defeat him once and for all. And even then, he still might be roaming around the galaxy. During his final death, he was able to utilize cackling bolts of red force lightning and a red wave that would shown to have overpowered all the beings he had ever wronged instantly, seemingly without effort. He was also able to reanimate the corpse of Vitiate and the corpse of Valkorion, as well as his original Sith pureblood body. Tenebrae has stationed and cemented himself in history as one of the most powerful Sith Lords to ever live, with his dark side mastery eclipsing that of even Nihilus, Sidious, and Crave, his Force Lightning ability capable of turning beings to ash, and against Revan, despite him using Tutuminus, was severely able to melt his mask, his signature item, to his face and induce the common scars that make Revan so iconic. So how does this compare to the planet killer of Darth Nihilus? Technically, he wasn't really a Sith Lord. Nonetheless, it is irrelevant, as he was still skilled in the dark side of the Force beyond possibly even Vitiate. As we know, he was famous for his Force Drain ability that made him the stuff of legends, which is capable of easily wiping out and scourging the life of an entire planet. That's a ridiculously impressive feat, as he was able to replicate this multiple times. Furthermore, he did this with great ease, so Nihilus is likely on a multi-planetary level, being able to drain the life of multiple planets during his tenure as a Sith Lord. It was stated by Visser Smart and Tobin that the extent of his power could not be put into words, and to him you were dust motes in a storm, a grain upon the beach, as insignificant as a body that orbit the battle and graveyard of Malachor. Trained to perfection by Darth Traya alongside Darth Sion. During combat, Nihilus fought an aggressive one-handed style using his lightsaber. However, his proficiency and adequacy with this blade was most likely on the term and tenure with Vitiate, being comparable in lightsaber combat. He had the experience and learned some of the greatest Sith techniques, teachings, and ways in all of Star Wars. But such practices took the form of dependence. They would make him stronger and satiate his immense Force-wounded hunger, but only for a certain time. And he would have had to feed upon Force energy and the life energy of beings and planets to replenish his immense strength. For this reason, Force-sensitive and worlds rich in the Force would draw him like a moth to a flame. His reach in the Force eventually extended to the point where he could feel all Force users throughout the galaxy to find planets steeped in the Force. This allowed him to sustain and satiate his immense dark side hunger and power as it continued to augment. He could feel Force users throughout the galaxy that he would cleanse entirely, using Force Drain that made him the stuff of legends to kill everything who was touched by the Force in that vicinity. Prolonged use of this power made him a threat to all life in the galaxy, as Darth Traya envisioned Nihilus being able to drain entire galaxies of the Force at will. As his craving and hunger grew more intense with each and every feeding, Darth Nihilus' hunger controlled him and not the other way around. The Sith Lord would instinctively slave away and feed upon those around him. His very words could kill and cause agony to the beings around him. Nihilus' very speech caused pain and death to all who heard it, and those who served upon him became utter slaves in time, zombies and the slaves of Nihilus. His ability was somewhat similar to Traya's influence upon others. The reconvened Jedi Council in the Jedi Enclave on Dantooine inferred that the Sith had somehow learned the ability to feed on the Force from her, where it was actually his Force wound persona and ability that allowed him to use this ability. Darth Nihilus was single-handedly, along with Darth Sion, brought about the first Great Jedi Purge, an event that would later be replicated by Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader during the events of the Revenge of the Sith with Order 66. Darth Nihilus went to the world of Qatar and used the Force to drain all the life essence from it. seemingly killing all but 2 of the Jedi in the galaxy, and maybe some spares that we do not know about that were in exile. This is a tremendous feat, as this is possibly the greatest Jedi killer aside from Darth Vader we're talking about, and Darth Nihilus was able to kill 100 Jedi in the space of seconds, draining their life essence to replenish his strength and make it even more unquestionably and unimaginably powerful. Darth Nihilus was adept in many aspects of the dark ways and teachings of the Force. He used his own creation, a dark variant of the Force Sever ability, to betray his master Darth Traya alongside Darth Sion. Sever Force was a non-lethal force power often employed by the Jedi against other Force-wielding foes that allowed them to disrupt their opponent's connection to the Force. However, the corrupt way that Nihilus employed it, he was able to literally kill the midichlorians coursing through Traya's veins, rendering her completely immune to the Force at all, and completely away from its sensitivity. He was able to use telekinesis to such a degree he could use the Force to lift starships, as he did on his homeworld of Ravacor 5 with the Ravager, his flagship. He tore it from the mass shadows that orbited and surrounded the planet, and kept it together, even though it had suffered extensive structural and external damage. This is an incredible feat that is only comparable, according to my knowledge, to Grandmaster Yoda, as during the Clone Wars, Grandmaster Yoda was able to use the Force to redirect 2 separatist gunships into one another. Not to show the Grandmaster short though, he did make one of the droid gunships pivot one way using clone troopers, thus making it change direction. Darth Nihilus was also proficient in Darth Rage, Farsight, Force Lightning. Force Lightning was one of his main abilities, with Force Lightning being possibly the staple of the dark side itself. Darth Nihilus was capable of using a red variation of Force Lightning that had the ability to instantly disintegrate and vaporize enemies, and prolonged exposure, if not turned up to its most lethal variation, could strip someone of their Force permanently. He even was able to escape death through the Force by containing and sustaining his consciousness in his armor, an ability that Darth Krayt, the preeminent Sith Lord and the last great Sith of the Legends timeline, would acquire of Nihilus' holocron millennia later. He was also proficient in Force Resistance, Force Screen, the same ability utilized by Emperor Palpatine to strike fear into the hearts of Saesee Tiin, Agen Kola, Kit Fisto, and Mace Windu during the battle in the Chancellor's office, Force Plague, a modified version of Force Slow that allowed Darth Nihilus to slow down the mind and attacks of his opponents and use telekinesis and Force Lightning to kill them, as well as his lightsaber, and Force Whirlwind. Force Whirlwind was an ability that allowed Nihilus to levitate multiple opponents with the Force and then blast them aside with telekinesis, often killing them, among others, such as a dark variation of Force Healing called Dark Healing. The Sith were most likely and most notably not able to use healing. Darth Bane, the Sith Ari, and the creator and founder of the Rule of Two, specifically noted he did not utilize and prolong the use and pursue the usage of Force Healing, as he believes that Force using along with the dark side was a lost cause, and that any form of healing was rejecting the Sith's way for utter power, as pain made the dark side stronger. However, both Nihilus and Sion both found ways around this technique. His knowledge also extended to the banks of Sith alchemy. During the Second Battle of Onderon, Nihilus' own sect of followers used techniques that could bend tame beasts to their will. Nihilus could increase and augment the strength of his Force powers he used greatly. If he wished, he was capable of reaching through the Force at a range as far as the star system to search for more beings. Well, with all the facts laid out and everything on the table, who truly is the most powerful Sith of all time? Now, this is the hardest versus I have had to currently do, as both Vitiate and Darth Nihilus are pure monsters with an unrivaled power in the dark side of the Force, surpassing even Sidious, Darth Krayt, Exar Kun, Tula Kord, and Darth Malgus, some of the most notable Sith Lords to revolutionize the Order, and Darth Bane, the founder of the Rule of Two. Anyway, in conclusion, I conclude that the most powerful Sith Lord of all time is Darth Nihilus. Darth Nihilus' trademark ability over Force Drain was simply too impressive to ignore. Darth Nihilus, upon binding his spirit to his armor, was essentially unkillable and could sustain his life on all the beings that he had ever killed. He was able to bind his spirit to his armor using the dark side, could delve into Sith alchemy, used the red Force Lightning, the most powerful version of Force Lightning due to its common association with the Son of Mortis, the living embodiment of the dark side. And not even Palpatine, Vitiate, or Malgus could use this ability, not even the exceptionally powerful Darth Krayt. Well, my friends, I hope that you understand why Darth Nihilus is the most powerful Sith of all time. However, I would like to set the record straight and state that this does not mean that I believe that Nihilus would beat Vitiate every time, as the only way, in my opinion, Vitiate could best the Lord of Hunger is through his mind-dominating powers, being able to dominate Nihilus's mind. So in conclusion, I paint this duel playing out like this. Vitiate and Nihilus meet on the devastated Sith holy world of Korriban. Vitiate immediately uses Force Lightning, with Darth Nihilus's dodges it with ease. They then draw out their Crimson Blades and start with a barrage of lightsaber strikes. Upon realizing that neither has the edge, due to their least adequate proficiency with the blade, they move on to Force powers. Vitiate unleashes more Force Lightning, with Nihilus bats away with his lightsaber. Nihilus then attempts to use Force Plague to slow down Vitiate. Vitiate's attacks begin to stagger, and seeing that Nihilus is about to get the upper hand, he begins to transfer his essence when Nihilus truly takes the victory. Nihilus then employs Force Drain, his namesake, and upon Vitiate attempting to override his consciousness using his mind-dominating powers, Nihilus drains his spirit and becomes an all-powerful dark entity. This is truly how I believe a battle between these two nigh-omnipotent Sith would play off, and I truly believe that my fact stands to reason. Anyway, it is entirely in the eye of the beholder. Please feel free to share your opinions in the comment section down below on who you believe could truly defeat in a brawl, Darth Nihilus or Darth Vitiate. With that out of the way, acolytes, I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away, and I hope you are not on the opposing side of Darth Nihilus's horrifying Force Drain. Greetings, my acolytes and students of the Force, and welcome back to the embrace of knowledge our archives provide here on the channel. I have been expecting you. During the time of the old Sith Wars and the Great Galactic War, we all know the story of Darth Vitiate, also known as Tenebrae. Darth Vitiate was the reigning Sith Emperor that ruled for 1,400 years, ruling for over a millennia and living for 4 centuries longer. Darth Vitiate is obviously the longest living Sith Lord in his corporeal form in all of Star Wars lore, legends and canon included. However, did you ever hear or unveil the holocrons and recover the distant and lost manuscripts of a third empire that was constructed during the time of these wars? The Eternal Empire seemingly came out of nowhere, emerging from the depths of wild space and carving a path of destruction right in the center of the Jedi and Sith, abolishing both orders, decimating them with the power and ferocity that it commanded. The ferocity that was led by Valkorion. Now, Valkorion is a very unique entity, being more powerful than Vitiate, who was the current reigning Dark Lord of the Sith and Sith Emperor. It is sort of important to know that Valkorion was Vitiate, just in a reanimated corpse and body, who he had dominated using his power of will domination, an ability that he possessed more mastery of than any other being in all of Star Wars history. But what was the secrets that hid behind the cryptic veil that was laced by the Eternal Empire? What was the infrastructure that it created? And how did it affect the galaxy, overthrowing both the Jedi and the Sith orders in mere days after carving and forging its path of destruction through the galaxy? Before we begin, acolytes, and delve into the stories of legends and uncover the lost truths of Valkorion and the lies of the Eternal Empire, I would like to note that many of the beings and starships that dock at our hangar bays have not yet ascended to the rank of Master. This greatly infuriates Valkorion, who shall use the Force to bend time and space to his will if you do not ascend to the rank of Master by striking down the subscribe button. and force crushing the like button in order to be notified for all your latest videos. With that out of the way, Acolytes, and Valkorian's anger tamed, let us begin. How is this possible? A second empire? Even to you couldn't have built all this. There must be another explanation. You presume limits to my power. There are none. The Outlander and Valkorian, two of the most important beings during the Eternal Empire's reign. Sometime between the ritual of Nathema, the ritual that was condemned and named the most important and complex Sith ritual ever conducted in all of Sith alchemist history and magician's history, conducted by Emperor Vitiate on his homeworld, stripping 8,000 Sith Lords of their free will and ripping the life force and force energy from Nathema. Sometime between this event and the Great Galactic War, which saw Sith like Darth Malgus, Darth Angral, and Lord Adras rise to prominence as they waged an apocalyptic war against the Jedi, Vitiate, the current reigning Sith Emperor, travelled into the other reaches of wild space in search of the Eternal Fleet, a supposedly unstoppable and unbreakable fleet of warships commanded by sentient droids created many thousands of years ago. His journey brought him to the distant and forgotten planet of Zakul, where he discovered a culture of superstitious humans who worshipped the ruthless old gods and deities, taking on the identity of Valkorian, who he had dominated using his power of will domination and utterly and completely dominating and acting as a heroic figure to the rest of the galaxy and the people of Zakul. Valkorian adopted this form in order to not be terrified all the subjects he was going to rule over. He unified the nomadic tribes of Zakul into a civilization utterly devoted to him and his eternal power, creating what would go to be known as the Eternal Empire, installing himself as the immortal Emperor of Zakul. He formed a new force user organization called the Knights of Zakul to serve as his special forces and elite Praetorian Guards, similar to the Roid Guard and Royal Guards that Palpatine used, and the Praetorian Guards that we see fighting Rey and Kylo Ren in Disney canon's The Last Jedi. A subgroup of knights called Scions used their visions to locate the Eternal Fleet and enslave the sentient Gemini droids to his eternal throne, binding their will to him. The Eternal Empire remained hidden until the Galactic War, when Valkorian's twin sons, Arcan and Thexan, who both possessed a connection to the Force that was rivaled only by Valkorian, Anakin Skywalker, and his twin children Luke and Leia Skywalker, proposed a preemptive strike against the greater galaxy to test the strength, ferocity, and willpower of both the Galactic Republic and the Sith Empire, who had been at war for many hundreds of years. Valkorian sanctioned their proposal, but commanded that only Thexan would lead their forces. Arcan disobeyed his father's orders and joined his brother on the front lines, showing his ferocity, resulting in him being wounded in action on the Korriban, the ancient Sith holy world where the Dark Jedi exiles had hailed from many years prior in 7000 BBY. When the twin princes returned to Zakul to present their trophies, the fallen lightsabers of both Jedi and Sith warriors, Valkorian merely turned his back on them, embracing the dark side to its fullest extent, allowing it to flow and funnel through him. Arcan lunged to attack his father and decapitate him with his yellow-bladed lightsaber, only to be restrained by his twin brother and childhood best friend Thexan, resulting in Arcan accidentally, in his blind rage and corruption of the dark side, accidentally killing his twin. Thexan's death was then covered up and publicly blamed as a casualty in the Core Worlds campaign, a campaign that saw Valkorian, Tharkan, and Exen invading the Core Worlds. When the Outlander, an immensely powerful and potent Force-sensitive entity, and Darth Maul, a Dark Council member that had held on to his position for 40 years since his mid-20s, now in his late 60s, Darth Maul was considered to be one of the most vicious and rival Sith Lords to Darth Vitiate, considered to be the most powerful Sith Lord, along with Darth Malgus and a few other notable Dark Lords that Vitiate saw as a threat to his rule. After the two dark beings were captured by Arkan after a major battle in which Darth Maul's ship was destroyed and decimated. The Emperor required to have a talk with them. Both the Outlander and Ma knew Valkorian's true identity, and that the Sith Emperor Vitiate had inhabited this form in order to grow and expand his eternal empire, and Zakuul was poised to become the greatest civilization in the galaxy. Whom they had been searching for, the Sith Emperor, and come across Valkorian. Valkorian stated that he would share his eternal empire and the power that the eternal throne commanded with them, and they would only kneel and pledge himself to his immense power. Ma replied that he would never again kneel to the likes of Valkorian. Ma was then executed by Valkorian after he reducted and stole a saber staff from one of the Knights of Zakuul, using a barrage of force lightning that utterly eviscerated and knocked the life out of the Dark Council member once and for all. The Outlander was given the same choice to kneel before Valkorian and change the galaxy into his liking, an opportunity that almost no one else had ever received. Arkan betrayed his father in hatred, and Valkorian was then killed. Arkan claimed himself to be the new Emperor of the Eternal Empire, and froze the Outlander in carbonite upon realizing that his father's spirit, Valkorian and Vitiate, had encased itself within the Outlander. Arkan used his father's own death to wage a conquest of the core world that would see the Galactic Republic and the Sith Empire combined on the losing end of the Eternal Throne's immense and unmatched technological might, with favouring ambush tactics and their massive technological superiority, and the Knights of Zakuul to destroy the bulk of both sides' fleets, all within a matter of months, that left the Sith and the Jedi virtually unassailable, with the Eternal Empire being unassailable to nearly any foe. At the end of the first year, the capitals of the both worlds, the Republic being Coruscant and the Sith Empire's capital being Drome and Karst, were blockaded. Only ships outfitted with the element isotope fire were capable of outrunning them, but could never truly compete. After a year of conflict, the governments of the Galactic Republic and the Sith Empire, represented by Senator Evran and Dark Darth Roran, had formed treaties and agreed to arms limitations and pay tribute to the Eternal Empire, making it the sole superpower in the galaxy. After massive battle stations known as Star Fortresses were placed and established in orbit of certain planets in the galaxy in order to keep rebellions from forming and to ensure that the reputations of both governments were paid. The fortresses were under the command of exiles, biologically and cybernetically enhanced Knights of Zakuul, who had remained loyal to Emperor Arkan and Emperor Valkorian. But as the galaxy suffered under the torment of the Eternal Empire, the Eternal Empire also did, in ways that many did not wish to see. Arkan's rule had become oppressive and cruel, with his sister Valen, who possessed an immensely powerful connection to the Force that was now untethered and no longer restrained by her father, causing death and destruction in her way, as her power and the Force continued to exceedingly grow rapidly, like the two currents of a flowing river. In the year 3631 BBY, Lana Beniko and Koth Vortina freed the Outlander from carbonite imprisonment, acquired an ancient ship that was once part of the Eternal Fleet called the Gravestone, and created an alliance named the Eternal Alliance, determined to destroy the Eternal Throne. Arkan, in turn, resorted to using all the resources of the Eternal Empire to hunt down and destroy this immense threat to his power. In the wake of the Alliance's formation, many operational objectives were carried out, foremost bringing the destruction of the Star Fortresses around potential ally worlds, such as Alderaan, Voss, and Bothawai, that had kept them from getting in contact as a result of them being ignored. These operations and missions carried out were in the intention of disobeying and disregarding the oppressive rule of Arkan and the Eternal Empire. They would see that several major worlds make contact with the Alliance against the Eternal Throne's oppressive might, and join in the war effort to restore the Galactic Republic and the Sith Empire back to their past immeasurable power before the Eternal Empire's resurgence. Sometime later, a contact and potential ally would present itself in the form of the anarchist known as Firebrand, who had been bombing minor targets on Zakuul for the past 2 years, without being caught by the elite Knights of Zakuul. and sky troopers to make contact with this anarchist. The Lady of Sorrows offered high-yield explosives, which would see the Outlander making contact with the being in question, revealed to be Kalo Dinjaris. Due to this, the Outlander stealing her thunder. A plan was devised to take down all the droids in the spire. This attack was to make the Zakuulian populace, who had become reliant on droid labour for menial yet important tasks in the wake of the Eternal Fleet's attack, to take stock of their situation and wake them up from their peaceful lives. As a result, the Overwatch facility, where all the commands for the droids and even sky troopers came from, was destroyed. With the systems down, the droids stopped working, at least for a short and brief period of time. But an added bonus was gaining the spy schematics, which detailed the infrastructure that would be for a usable attack and eventual assault on the spire in order to remove Arcan from his immeasurable seat of power. The new Emperor would use this event as an excuse for the destruction of 5 worlds that happened earlier in his search for the Alliance and the Outlander. After the journey with Firebrand, Theron Shan used his resources to contact the Galactic Republic, finding out that the elite Havoc Squad would be conducting authorized raids on Zakuul beneath the notice of the Senate and other higher-ups within the Republic military. A meeting was set between them, himself and the Outlander, to recruit the squad in joining the Alliance's forces that met within the Endless Swamp, where they discovered that Arik Jorgen was now commander of the squad, and not Jace Malcolm. Unfortunately, their landing did not go unnoticed on Zakuul, and a probe trapped their location until Jorgen was shotting it down, forcing the squad to split up in different directions in order to return to the camp without the unit becoming compromised should have they been captured. The Outlander and Jorgen would find a vantage point in order to cover the retreat, as they spoke about the events of the last 5 years, the situation on Zakuul, and even about Arcan's oppressive might. This continued until only Jorgen discovered the Zakuulian exiles, people who doubted Arcan's policies and actions, who were subsequently left in the swamp to die, being chased by sky troopers, and their homes were being burned down, to crack down on negative actions against the Eternal Empire and the Eternal Throne. This would later be a folly, for during an attack on the Night of Zakuul outpost that contained a planet-wide comm relay, the Outlander, Theron, and Havoc Squad were pinned down by a sky trooper reinforcement. Once their objective was achieved, the situation was looking grim, and the Zakuulian exiles destroyed a transport shuttle that was ferrying in additional sky troopers and blew up the squad that had pinned them down using thermal detonators. Depending on the Outlander's choice, the Zakuulian exiles would either begin training with Havoc Squad to become guerrilla fighters or would fight on their own, no longer dependent on the sky troopers to defend themselves. Well, acolytes, I should confess now that this is going to be a 2-part video, with this instating part 1, and the following part, which I'll upload in the next week, being part 2, due to the fact that many of my videos have been growing 20 to 40 minutes long, and due to the fact that many of you who watch my videos and embrace the knowledge that our archives provide are a younger audience, do not have the time to sit down and watch 40-minute and 20-minute long videos every single day that I release them. So I'm going to start splitting my longer videos, unless I have lore compilation in the title, into 2 parts, with this being the first example of this initiative. The Eternal Empire saga will continue, I assure you, and I am working on the video as you watch this, and will release it sometime in the next week. With that out of the way, I hope you have ascended to the rank of Master. Goodbye, acolytes, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. What's up, scholars and scientists of the Force and will of the Force itself, and welcome back to the archives that our channel provides. Recently on the channel, I did a video covering the entire structure, military, and the history of the Eternal Empire that carved a path of destruction, dethroning the hold of the galaxy out of both the Jedi and the Sith hands. In that video, I stated that I am attempting to not make such long videos in order for the audience that do not have so much time to study in depth about Star Wars, or simply are not a lore-centric nerd like I am, are still able to entertain themselves and immerse themselves in sci-fi knowledge without it taking 2.5 hours, as many videos in the future will do. As I stated, I would be making 2 parts of this Eternal Empire compilation of their military, society, culture, religion, very similar to the Mandalorian video I have done previously. So I say this, acolytes, before we begin, I implore you, strike down the subscribe button and ascend to the rank of master upon this channel. Please, it is your destiny. Now, let's pick up where we left off in the raiding of the Gilded Star. Sometime after the event that will become to known as the Battle of the Hyperwave Relay Station, Gaunt Reno, who was a former associate of the Grand Champion of the Great Hunt, approached the Commander, also known as the Outlander, the protagonist of the Old Republic game during this time, with a proposition to raid the Gilded Star, an Eternal Empire treasury ship hiding in the atmosphere of the gas giant Vandin in Star Wars Galaxy. The Commander agreed to this plan and scheme and accompanied Gaunt to Vandin along with Lana Beniko, Theron, Shan, Senya Tyrell, and Scorpio. Senya Tyrell was the mother of Valen, Arkan, and Thexan, and the brief wife and partner of Emperor Valkorion, the immortal Emperor of Zakul, who was currently in his Valkorion form dead. But the man who hosted his body, Vitiate, was very much still alive. Arriving on the gas giant's Tibana mining platform, Galt took the Commander to look for the hiding container Dretcher, an Animoid's identity slicer. Immediately recognizing Galt as Tyrese Lakai, Dretcher activated his battle droids and tried to kill the Deveronian. However, Galt and the Commander easily destroyed and decimated the droids, and though Dretcher's container boasted reinforced armor, Galt threatened to shake him to death with a sonic amplifier if the need arose. Dretcher had no choice but to let the Deveronian inside and agreed to do his job in exchange for finally getting Tyrese off his back. Galt and the Commander then attended the meeting with the Brecken gang and its captain, Kenric Frost. Asking to inspect the missile, Galt announced his refusal to pay for it. After the Niktos raised their arms, activated the warhead, the Nikto ran away, attempting to flee the blast radius, but Galt was unable to stop the countdown, which reached 0. However, his Twi'lek partner, going by the name and aliases of Vitiate, was revealed to be hidden inside the missile, having already removed the warhead beforehand the event. Galt then assembled an entire team at their hideout and laid out his entire plan and scheme to infiltrate the ship. Dretcher would then supply the identity of High Justice Valen for her mother Senya Tyrell, who provided a genetic match and required character knowledge, and who would take Scorpio aboard as her attack droid. They would access the bridge and deactivate security protocols, allowing Vete, Galt, and the Commander to get on board and place the warhead inside the vault and destroy the ship. When the Gilded Star came up for its annual resupply, the Alliance team moved into position. Dretcher's holographic disguise enabled worked, allowing Senya Tyrell to get on board under identifier of her daughter. From the bridge, Scorpio opened the way to the vault for Galt and the Alliance Commander and the Outlander, while Veta used her sneaking skills to disable the vault's security mechanisms. Once inside the vault, Galt planted the missile warhead, which upon detonation vaporized its entire content of precious metals and jewels, while leaving everything outside the vault safe and intact. The vault's entire content of precious metals, jewels, artifacts was then pumped into the tanker piloted by Lana Beniko, Theron Shan, while Scorpio and Senya soon joined them. Galt, Vete, the Commander, encountered some difficulties when the only escape route available to them was to take the Skyhawk down the way they came, an incredibly hazardous jump. But their path was blocked by the real Valen, an extremely powerful Force-sensitive being who was second only to Emperor Arkan in the Eternal Empire, who arrived with an inspection force, determined to avoid confronting her and her immense, nigh unstoppable power. Galt suggested going outside on the ship's hull, where he received a call from Hilo Viz. His old partner positioned her shuttle next to the hull of the Gilded Star, so that Galt, Vete, and the Alliance Commander, Outlander, could jump it off it directly onto her vessel, boarding it, while the rest of their team left on board Beniko's tanker. Returning to Odessen, Galt and Vete expressed their desire to join the Eternal Alliance, but the celebration was interrupted by the incursion and return of Arik Jorgen and Kalo Dinjanis. who managed to escape the immortal Emperor's planet of Zakul with a database on the Gemini droids, although losing the rest of Havoc Squad in the process of this. Hoping to salvage the fiasco, Benico ordered Scorpio to analyze the data archives in an attempt to get rid of the Eternal Empire once and for all. The collapse of the Empire came swiftly after. By the end of the war with the Alliance, Emperor Arcan, who had taken up his father's spot Valkorion as the new emperor, had been dethroned. Empress Valen, who succeeded her brother, was killed, and Valkorion was destroyed, with using the power of a powerful, nigh unstoppable holocron, all due in part due to the actions of the incredibly powerful being known as the Outlander. When Empress Valen was killed, no successor to the throne was present, as all three children of the Eternal Emperor and Immortal Emperor of Zakul, Valkorion, also known as Vitiate and Tenebrae, were either dead or had converted themselves over or surrendered, allowing the Outlander to take control and topple the Eternal Empire. The Eternal Empire was then later dissolved, with some of its holdings acquired by the Alliance, which would reform into a full-fledged government known as the Eternal Alliance afterwards. The ruler of the Eternal Empire, as the name suggested, held the title and monologue of Emperor, or if the ruler was female, like Valen, Empress, and the overall government system is an absolute monarchy. The head of the government and military was the High Justice. The High Justice also, apparently, according to text and law, was the second in command of the Empire, and had unlimited power when Valen held rank under Arcan's leadership. The vast military that the Eternal Empire commanded, said to be grander and more vast than any military in all of galactic history, was composed primarily and majorly of the Sky Trooper legions and the Knights of Zakul, Force-sensitive knights that guarded the Emperor-Empress. It did possess biologists, found mainly on the Star Fortresses, and other humans as officers and generals, going by the name of Koth Van Tenar. Personnel known in the Eternal Empire's vast military included Eternal Empire troopers and their vast variations. During Eternal Empress Valen's reign, the Horizon Guard was formed to serve her directly as her emissaries, and to surpass the mediocre Knights of Zakul, who had failed to defend her brother during the Battle of Odessin. The head of the Eternal Empire's military was known in ranks as the High Justice. Zakulians in society were generally raised in the comfort and safety of the overarching technology marvel known as the Spire, something that would make the Ricarda jealous, and led easy lives of intellectual and creative pursuits. Despite this comfort, some occasionally felt compelled to seek out less high-minded excitement and enjoyment. The old world, the remnants of Valkorion, also known as Vitiate's first attempt at a grand, overarching galactic powerhouse city, offered one opportunity for citizens of the Spire to indulge their needs for exhilaration. Many Zakulians had paid at least one visit to cheer up the gladiator pits or sample the red light district. Countless more simply ventured down to tour the seedy streets and the thrill of the distasteful and the taboo of that world. Well, my friends, I hope you have enjoyed the second part and final part of the Eternal Empire breakdown. I really enjoy making these videos covering the Emperors and Empires. I will certainly be making videos on each of the characters I have talked about: Valen, Arcan, Valkorion, and Thexan. Videos and personal for them are coming soon. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want me to explore to immerse yourself in the vast lore surrounding other ethereal, dark side or light side empires, and I shall gladly produce videos by the mass production about these immensely vast empires that have reigned a tyrannical regime across the Star Wars galaxy as a whole. Well, my friends, I hope that you're enjoying this lore compilation, and that I'm trying to make my videos shorter for beings and entities in the real world who do not have the time to immerse themselves in the complete breakdown of Star Wars lore. Be sure to strike down the subscribe button and ascend to the rank of Master. Goodbye, acolytes and students, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. The Dark Lord Vitiate is undisputedly one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, Sith Lord of all of Star Wars lore, securing himself as perhaps the only being who could match the power and force sensitivity of Nihilus, a very entity and vergent in the Force itself. Vitiate reached a namesake of fame that no other Sith in his preceding history of the Order had ever achieved, ruling the Sith Empire for over 1,300 years, and governing the massive Eternal Empire Armada single-handedly for a bit over a year, and perhaps even longer if we count the time he did not spend open reigning. However, Vitiate was most famous for his ability that none in all of Star Wars history ever paralleled, not even its pioneer in Darth Vader. I am speaking about the Essence Transfer Technique. The Essence Transfer Technique was a dark side force practice that was developed sometime after the exiles arrived on Korriban by ancient Sith King Darth Vader. Darth Vader being the pioneer of many dark side abilities that we have come to know and love, and a handy hand at force lightning that I will surely make a video on later. Vitiate would later go on to perfect this ability, honing it and making it his go-to ability whenever he died. He employed this after being killed as the Sith Emperor by the hero of Tython, after being defeated by the Outlander, absorbing his own spirit into their consciousness in order to rule the galaxy as a heroic savior. However, after this attempt was liberated by his children, his family, and the Outlander as well as Darth Maul and Satele Shan, Valkorion was left without a mortal shell to occupy, leaving him stranded, alone, and for possibly the first time in all of history, confused, baffled, and fearful. However, there is one tale that I have excavated from the ancient tombs on Drummond Castle and recovered from the ruins of the Sith Citadel that I would like to unveil today, bringing it to a light that is powerful and potent as the city streets of Korriban. I am speaking about Vitiate's attempted rebirth and how the seemingly immortal Emperor of the Sith was finally killed, permanently vanquished, and the versions of the Force that had held dominion as the most powerful Force user in history for over 1,500 years finally was defeated by the combined might of all those he had wronged. Now, my friends, let us proceed. Due to his obsession and fascination with the art of immortality and the subsequent use of the Emperor's voice, Vitiate sustained and kept his original Sith pure-blooded body in the form of Tenebrae, locked in stasis where it could not be harmed either by nature or outside interference, such as by the Jedi or the Sith, and most notably the hero of Tython or Revan. Its location was concealed only to him, and only to his most trusted servants, including the first and former Emperor's Wrath in Lord Scourge. Vitiate, at an unknown period of time, carved an ancient ethereal Sith ritual into his body to act as a last resort in the event that his body was harmed, which would immobilize the attackers by putting them into a coma, infecting them with the dark side plague. The plague would then spawn an entity that would eventually feed on the victims by connecting their minds with a plethora of force techniques and merging into an even stronger entity that Vitiate would attempt to inhabit. However, despite the effectiveness of the plague, anybody who was previously granted a portion of Vitiate's power was rendered immune to the plague's effects due to the past power vaccine to it. Lord Scourge and Kira Karsan discovered the location of Vitiate's original body, as they had destroyed it practically at the same time the Alliance commander destroyed Valkorion's spirit in their mind during the battle for Zakuul. The event led to a plague being released and rendering Scourge and Kira comatose for more than a year. Satele Shan, the current reigning Grand Master of the Jedi Order, and the great-granddaughter of Revan and Bastila Shan, as well as her Jedi followers, learned of this and proceeded to rescue the duo. However, they unknowingly doomed themselves in the process, without having any sort of vaccine similar to what Scourge and Kira possessed. The duo trapped the now plagued Satele Shan and her followers in a transport program to travel a random course through unsettled sectors of the Outer Rim, with a few med droids to tend to them and ensure their bodies did not decay. Scourge and Kira later learned that the plague unleashed a vicious entity that was connecting the minds of Satele and her followers and merging into a stronger, united hive mind. They sought the aid of the Alliance commander, the Outlander, first by testing them on Mekshar to ensure that Valkorion was truly dead, and saw no trace of his power lingering in their mind, mainly due to the Emperor being a master deceiver, born with the cunning and mind of Emperor Palpatine himself. Upon the commander passing their exquisite test, Scourge and Kira revealed their plan to the commander, they would send a signal to the transport in order to bring it to an empty sector close to Odessa. Upon its arrival, they would board the transport, connect their minds through the use of the Force, and attempt to destroy the dark entity. If this did not work, their last resort would be destroying the transport itself, and if they could, Vitiate's original form. The commander agreed to this proposal, and Kira stated it would be a while before the transport came into range. Until then, Scourge and Kira offered their aid in any possible and conceivable mission the commander requested. Much to Scourge's increasing frustration, however, the ship disappeared, not appearing at its next expected rendezvous point. To hunt it down, they suggested the commander to send droids, as they would not become corrupted by Vitiate's immense power. The droid T-701, piloting a starfighter, was able to locate the ship and transmit coordinates to Odessa. This also uncovered and continued the existence of the Emperor's Hand, Vitiate's innermost circle of fanatics and followers, as they had been vessels of his own power, and thus could resist his corruption. The commander, Scourge, and Kira attempted to travel alone to the ship, but were joined by others from Odessa, who provided fire support when the Emperor's Hand attacked them in his shuttle. Tizavine had been able to get aboard the ship and sabotage its systems, enough for the commander and their allies to board. Kira shut down the ship's engines and defences, while Scourge and the commander joined to launch the escape pods and jettison in the servant shuttles, in order to prevent the curse from getting off the ship. As they explored the ship, however, the commander and Scourge discovered that the servants had been engaged by another force, the Scions of Zakul, whose late leader, Heskal, had prophesied their return when it was time to die. After clearing the bridge, the commander and Scourge were approached by the disapparated spirit of Revan, who had been guiding Scourge to stop the Emperor's rebirth for years. Though thought to have become one with the Force on Yavin years before, in the shadow of Revan expansion, Revan explained he could not rest until he knew Vitiate's spirit was eternally condemned to chaos, and warned that Vitiate was using his possessed victims to remake himself, feeding on their Force energy. With the ship disabled, Kira rejoined the commander and Scourge in the medical facilities, where they confronted the leaders of both the servants and the Scions, the latter of whom was killed by the former. After dispatching the servant leader, Kira found that the Satil still lived, 2 of the possessed Jedi were dead, and the others were close to death. As planned, Kira connected the others via the Force to enter Satil Shan's mindscape, where they all encountered all 3 of the Emperor's known guises. There, first was Emperor Valkorion, the immortal Emperor of Zakul, then Darth Vitiate, and finally, his original adolescent form in Tenebrae. Kira realized the ritual carved into Tenebrae's original body was not a plague, but an imprint, an echo of his original persona. Tenebrae condemned the version of him they knew as too complacent, distracted by mortal concerns, empires, wars, and even in Valkorion's case, a family, and declared he would succeed where his original self had failed. The Vitiate form separated the commander from their allies. However, they were soon joined by Revan, who stood with the commander against Tenebrae's various forms, while the 3 forms declared themselves eternally endless. They were first confronted by Mitra Surik, whom Tenebrae mocked for a failure to kill him once before, and then by Scourge, who reminded him he had saved the Emperor from her the first time, but would not do so again. The Tenebrae form lashed out to separate the commander from the others. The commander then encountered Sith Lord and Dark Counselor Darth Maul, who had been killed at the commander's side on Zakul by Valkorion years prior. Maul explained that the new Tenebrae only knew of his past deeds from the memories and impressions of Satil and his students, but had gained none of the wisdom from those experiences. Maul then warned that if he was not stopped now, there would not be another opportunity, and called upon the commander to break the chains he uses to ensnare us all, as we quote. Finally, the commander reached the center of the mindscape, a recreation of the very own temple on Tython, and encountered Satil within it. The Emperor's 3 forms boasted that Satil could not resist for long, and that when her mind was destroyed, only Tenebrae would remain, reanimating Satil Shan's decomposing corpse in order to make him a true Force god. Satil then awoke and mocked Tenebrae for his ego and overconfidence. He could have dominated any one of her students, but instead chose to dominate them all, as well as their master, to prove to all that he was still omnipotent and powerful. Well, almost omnipotent. As Satil spoke, those whom the Emperor had manipulated and killed, tortured and tormented over the centuries, all who knew his true weakness, his pride and vanity, and his unending fear of death began to manifest themselves as false apparitions, standing behind the commander, the one who had the power to destroy him once and for all. In the end, Tenebre's power was not enough to save him, as the commander and their allies were able to withstand the unfathomable power of the Emperor's three forms. Defeated, the three guards of the Emperor were petrified in stone and crumbled to dust, just as his victims on Nathema and Xios had done in the past. Once and for all time, the Emperor was no more. What I am about to show you is private information concerning the Old Republic game and my personal experiences with it. The Old Republic game is where Vitiate was introduced, and unquestionably, in my opinion, the best Star Wars game to ever be released. With that out of the way, my friends, enjoy the next few minutes of content.
Enough! You will all learn the true depths of my power. Everything you've done, everyone you've betrayed, everyone you've manipulated, everyone you've murdered. The Force seeks balance, always. No. No! The Force is mine. I command it. I am endless. No. In the end, you are nothing.
Well, my friends, this is where we part ways. I hope that you have enjoyed excavating the new tombs about Darth Vitiate. Truly one of my favourite Sith Lords in all of Star Wars lore, and in all of the Sith Lord history. His ethereal, divine, almost omnipotent dark side power makes him truly ousted within the Sith Order as a true Sith Emperor, surpassing Palpatine, Tula Horde, the spirit of Exar Kun, and possibly, as some has debated, his nihilist and power and mastery even exceeded that of Darth Nihilus himself, possibly the most powerful Sith Lord to ever live. Goodbye, my friends. This is where we part ways. Adorn yourself with your Jedi robes, grab your lightsaber, study your Force techniques, and journey out into the now scarred and worse galaxy.
It is you who fears death, Valkorion. I do not. I will not kneel.
I've grown from a man to a god. life spans millennia. Legions have risen to test me.
If you kill everyone in the galaxy, you'll be the Emperor of nothing. What's the point of all this?
You discern a fraction of reality. Beyond these stars exist other galaxies, other worlds, other beings. I will experience or ignore them as I wish. I will spend eternity becoming everything: a farmer, an artist, a simple man. When the last living thing in the universe finally dies, I will enjoy peace and wait for the cycle to begin again.
Such words were uttered by one of the most immortal and powerful Sith Lords to ever grace the Star Wars galaxy. Yes, my friends, I am talking about the main antagonist of the Old Republic game, specifically its Echoes of Oblivion counterpart. However, he certainly was prominent in all of the other variations of this game. I am talking about Vitiate, his birth name of Tenebrae. The words you have just heard uttered were talked about to Tenebrae and the hero of Tython during their attack, when the hero of Tython launched an assault on Tenebrae. His life had spanned millennia. Legions have risen to test him. His ascendance is inevitable. A day, a year, a millennium, it matters not to him. He holds the patience of stone and the will of stars. His striving is insignificant. Let your death be the same. The Sith Emperor and the hero of Tython engaged in many conversations. The Sith Emperor Tenebrae is the subject of today's video. We will be covering a brief variation of his life. I would like to implore you to strike down the subscribe button and ascend to the rank of master on this channel, as we are delving into the old legends. Before we begin, I would like to tell you and alarm you to the fact that later in this channel's history, in a galaxy far, far away, I will recover an ancient holocron that will depict his in-depth life and recover every single bit of information I can have on Darth Vitiate. This is just a brief explanation. If you want to stick around for that, I highly suggest you watch this video and watch that one when it releases. With that quick distraction out of the way, acolytes, let's begin. Tenebrae, known to the old Sith Empire and holocrons and scrolls as the immortal Sith Master Darth Vitiate, his reconstituted Sith Empire as the Sith Emperor, and his eternal empire as the immortal Emperor of Zakul Valkorion, was an ancient dark side entity of vast and nigh unopposed power who manipulated galactic affairs for 1,500 years. Born in 5113 BBY, as the illegitimate and unintended son of Sith Lord Dramath, the leader of Medrias and ruler of the planet in the old Sith Empire, Tenebrae carved a devastating and nigh unopposed path of destruction across the planet Medrias, a planet he would one day rule, torturing and massacring thousands by the age of 10, gorging and feeding himself on their dark side energy and power. When Dramath, his birth father, confronted him, using his immeasurable dark side talent and innate dark side power, Vitiate, now Tenebrae, was able to sever his own father's connection to the Force, and imprisoned and encased his spirit for a millennia of torment under his rule. Eventually, the current reigning Dark Lord of the Sith, during the golden age of the Sith Marker Ragnos, recognized and acknowledged Tenebrae's immense dark side power, and christened him as the new Sith Lord, Lord Vitiate, the new ruler of Medras. Vitiate proceeded to rename the world Nathema and ruled it for the next century, distancing himself from the Sith power struggles. Following Naga Sadow's defeat in the Great Hyperspace War, he chose to distance himself. Vitiate lured the remaining Sith Lords to Nathema and, in an elaborate ritual stated to be the most complex and dark Sith ritual ever conducted by any Sith Lord, drained their life essence and that of the entire planet, increasing his powers and prolonging his life to the point of spiritual immortality. His powers at this point were greater than possibly any Sith in all of galactic history, and his mastery over the Force was certainly unopposed in all of the galactic timeline. Shedding his identity as Lord Vitiate, the self-proclaimed Sith Emperor led the scattered Sith survivors to Droman Castle and established a new Sith Empire. Droman Castle was one of the original Sith Holy Worlds, alongside Korriban, its brother. As the Emperor and Empire secretly expanded over the next millennia, the Emperor discovered the lost world of Zakul and the Eternal Fleet, an ancient armada with unmatched technology and technological advancements in science. Dissatisfied with the Sith ideology currently, the Emperor divided his consciousness into a Zakulian warrior under the guise of Valkorion, the immortal Emperor of Zakul, and created a vast civilization that came to be known as the Eternal Empire. The Emperor desired absolute immortality, to experience and expand his new creation across galaxies and realities. So he plotted to initiate a war between his own Sith Emperor and Empire and the Galactic Republic's regime. The deaths caused by the conflict will fuel a new ritual that would allow him to consume almost everything in the galaxy and become an perversion of the dark side of the Force and a Force god, more akin to that of Abeloth or the Sun than any other being and Sith Lord in all of Sith history. He would have exceeded the powers of the full potential Chosen One, the father of Mortis, Abeloth. He would have become the most powerful being possibly in all of galactic history, even more powerful than the mighty Bendu, and on par with that of the Force priestesses. As the Emperor's plans neared completion, he orchestrated the Mandalorian Wars as a preliminary invasion and test of the Republic's strength, but two immeasurably and innately powerful Jedi Knights, known in galactic history as Revan and Malak, defeated the Mandalorians, including Mandalore the Ultimate, and tracked down his Sith Empire to Dromund Kaas. The Emperor effortlessly dominated their minds using his immense dark side control and ability, but the pair soon broke free from his control and betrayed him and each other in the resolute Jedi civil war that nearly decimated the Jedi Order. A redeemed Revan waged a mental war against the Emperor's power, delaying his great galactic war against the Republic by 3 centuries. The Sith Empire still nearly conquered the Republic in the end, but Revan further influenced Vitiate using his immense mastery over the light and dark side of the Force. Distracted by the birth of his 3 children, to the Zakul Knight Senya Tirau, Arcan, Thexan, and Valen, to sue for peace instead, prompting a decade-long Treaty of Coruscant. As hostilities eventually and inevitably resume, Dark Councillor Darth Barras lured the Emperor to the planet Vos, encasing and trapping him within the domain of the dark-side entity Sel Makor until he was rescued by the Second Emperor's Wrath, taking over the job from Sith Lord Scourge, who had taken the job many centuries prior. Free, the Emperor attempted to initiate his galaxy-wide ritual, but an all-powerful Jedi Knight that came to be known as the Hero of Tython, also theorized to be the Outlander in some circles, thwarted his efforts and regime and destroyed his host body in a battle on Dromund Kaas. However, his immortality-fueled ritual that Nefema had conducted, he had done that ritual in order to sustain his spirit, and now it had paid off. His spirit endured. His wounded spirit and phantom went into slumber on the planet Yavin 4, the planet that Luke Skywalker would set up and establish his Jedi Order many thousands of years later upon, and also the planet that Exar Kun would sustain his life force on for many thousands of years. Until it returned, crazed and crazy Revan attempted to resurrect the weakened Emperor after his rebirth to a physical form to permanently decimate and destroy him, seeing it as his destiny and one true goal. Although Revan's plans were eventually foiled, the Emperor's spirit fed off the battle and reawakened, then struck against his former Sith Empire and consumed the planet Zyos to return to his full, unmatched dark side might and full power, still desiring to initiate the godlike ritual that would make him a Force entity, something beyond any Jedi or Sith could ever hope to be. Reassuming the visage of Valkorion, he revealed the Eternal Empire to the galaxy as his twin sons, both who possessed an extremely powerful connection to the Force that could even rival that of the twin children of Anakin Skywalker, Arcan and Thexan, invaded Imperial and Republic space, carving a path of destruction and taking the grip of the galaxy outside of both the Jedi and the Sith. They captured a famous champion that would later be known in galactic history as the Outlander, judging the Outlander alone among all beings in the galaxy to be a worthy adversary. Valkorion orchestrated his own death at the hands of Arcan, fueling on his anger, and embedded his consciousness within the Outlander's mind in order to travel the galaxy as a heroic freer and vindicator of the Eternal Emperor, intending to become a heroic figure in the eyes of the galaxy rather than a tyrannical overlord of the Sith. Assisting in the Outlanders' immense power progression, Valkorion began to form and shape the Outlander into a vessel of supreme power as the champion defeated Arcane, capable of containing his immensely powerful force, lightning, and essence. Then, the Outlander finished and completed killing his daughter, Valen, and disabled the entire Eternal Fleet, a fleet of extremely massive droids that were operated in sentience, and a fleet that was said to be grander than any that ever reigned over the galaxy. Valkorion sought to completely take over and dominate the champion's body and rule the galaxy as a heroic liberator, but in a final clash of wills and power, the Outlander and Valkorion's own family, Senya Tyrell, Valen, and Arcane and Thexan, banished the ancient entity into the void of space. Simultaneous with the expulsion, the former Emperor's Wrath, Scourge, and the Jedi Knight Kira Carson destroyed Tenebrai's original body, dooming his spirit to chaos. However, the active released a final, desperate visage of his essence, imbued into his flesh centuries earlier, which soon took hold in the form of a plague of the Jedi Grand Master Satele Shan, a descendant of Bastila Shan and Darth Revan, and her Jedi followers, drawing off their memories and their immense power. The imprint slowly reformed itself into a duplicate of Tenebrae and threatened to use Shan as his new host. Many afterwards of history's greatest champions gathered in Satele Shan's mind, including the Outlander and Revan, two beings that Tenebrae had wronged so greatly over the years, and the souls of all those ever wronged and misjudged by Tenebrae joined together within Shan's mindscape and condemned into the spirit of chaos once and for all, destroying the dark side entity once and for all. Well, my friends, that was a complete brief life of Tenebrae. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a grander and longer video revolving around this subject, and I'm sure that you will tune in for that if you're a die-hard lore expert. However, I mainly created this video as a way for the not-so-good Star Wars fans who don't have the time to watch an hour-long video to still immerse themselves in the knowledge of the dark side. With that out of the way, acolytes, ascend to the rank of Master and strike down the subscribe button. I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away.
Until the one person who proved you could be defeated came here to destroy you, once and for all.
I am master to all things. Not one can challenge my power.
You named me your wrath. Here, now, I can think of no better name.
Enough! You will all learn the true depths of my power.
Darth Vitiate is unquestionably one of the most formidable and powerful Sith Lords to ever torment the Star Wars galaxy. With a reign spanning over 1,300 years, he was idolized as a god king to his people, similar to the immortal god king of Prakith known as Darth Andedu, who I will cover in a later video. Darth Vitiate, with his birth name being Tenebrae, also known as the immortal Emperor of Zakul Valkorion, was a monster. He was immensely powerful in the Force, with a midichlorian count even eclipsing that of Sidious, theorized to only be second to Anakin Skywalker's, with Anakin's clocking in at around 27 to 40,000 midichlorians per cell, with some claiming it is even higher, and Darth Vitiate's midichlorian count being speculated to be around 25,000 plus midichlorians per cell, a midichlorian count he would pass on to his children in Arcane, Thexan, and Valen. Shout out to Kalani, one of my viewers, who suggested today's video, suggesting that I do a video on the legend of Darth Vitiate. I would like to note that later in my channel's history and holocron openings, I will delve into the archive and uncover the full story of Darth Vitiate, or Tenebrae if you want to call him by his birth name, and risk getting obliterated. But today we shall delve into one of the only Sith who eclipsed the power and natural force potential of Darth Sidious, on par with Darth Nihilus, the literal wound in the Force. There was no death to Vitiate, there was only the Force, and he was its master. watch and join us acolytes as we delve into the legend of Darth Vitiate and his immense dark side power that went unrivaled for nearly 1,000 years. Are you ready, acolytes? Let's begin. It is important to note before we begin, acolytes, and I would like to make you aware that a large variety of the people who watch my channel have not subscribed yet. As you envelop yourself in the archives and knowledge of our history and the Star Wars lore, I would consider subscribing, docking in with your star fleet, and hitting the subscribe button using your telekinetic or force prowess, or slashing it down with your lightsaber blade. You should also use force lightning to electrocute and utterly dominate and subdue the like button, forcing it into submission. With that out of the way, acolytes, let's get into the full power of Darth Vitiate. Even as a child, Tenebrae, later known to history as Darth Vitiate and Valkorion, possessed immense strength in the Force, with, like I stated earlier, a midichlorian count eclipsing that of even Darth Sidious and Galen Merrick. His abilities began to manifest themselves at the age of 6, when upon witnessing his stepfather and mother engaging in a duel after his stepfather learnt that he had been fathered by the ruler of that planet, the planet named Medrias, and its ruler and tyrannical Sith Lord Dominator named Lord Drummer. The stepfather lashed out at his wife and began beating her, using his newfound powers and feeding on the rage and hate that his stepfather felt for his mother. He used the Force to snap his adoptive stepfather's neck with a singular thought. At the age of 6, he then proceeded to torture his own mother with the Force for months, while delving into her fear and pain, feeding on it in order to grow his immense dark side skill and aptitude. Feeding off the suffering of his mother, like many other Sith Lords have done in the past and in the future of Vitiate's timeline, gorging himself on the fear and suffering that she endured until finally he allowed her to die. As his powers grew, Tenebrae continued to gorge and feed himself on the fear and suffering of those whom he tortured, being much more proficient in this ability than any other being in all of Star Wars lore. He tortured many and killed many in public executions, drawing them out for many days at a time in order to master the dark side and have it manifest through him, coursing through his very veins inner tentacles of vicious maliciousness. When he confronted his real father, the Sith Lord Dramath, who was a master and Dark Lord of the Sith, who was quite powerful in the dark side of the Force. At the age of 10, Tenebrae was effortlessly able to strip the man of both his sanity and his power in the Force, before finally killing him, feeding off his fear and suffering before doing so. Tenebrae's power at the age of 13 was great enough for Marka Ragnos, in my opinion one of the most powerful Dark Lords to ever live, with a mastery over Sith lightning only rivaled by that of Naga Sadow and Vitiate himself, and the current Dark Lord of the Sith at that time, to acknowledge the teenager's strength, granting him the title of Lord Vitiate and christening him ruler of Medras, the planet and his home planet that he had dominated and where he had killed his mother all those years ago, and snapped his adoptive stepfather's neck. On that day, the Emperor was truly born. Vitiate soon gained a reputation and garnered as a scholar, spending much of the next century studying and delving into the deep secrets and lost scrolls of dark side and Sith sorcery in order to augment his connection to the Force, as many other Sith had done in the past. He became one of the most powerful and proficient practitioners of both Sith magic, sorcery, and alchemy throughout history, and undoubtedly and unquestionably the most proficient being in these abilities at that time. Another one of Vitiate's specialties was in the domination of his opponent's minds, as he was able to dominate the minds of 8,000 Sith Lords, stripping them of their free will and binding their will to his. It is noted that in the Revan novel, when Lord Scourge first meets the Emperor, he felt the air rise cold around him. He heard a deep echo from the depths of his voice as the Emperor spoke, His thoughts then drifted to a horrifying conclusion. He had seen the devastation of Nathema, his own homeworld, which he had devastated using a ritual, the most complex ritual ever conducted in fact, which I'll do a video on later in the channel's lifespan. He noted that he could hear the echo through Vitiate's voice, and wondered and pondered on the question that maybe, just maybe, Vitiate's spirit contained the spirit of all those he had killed and fed on the life force of that day, fueling his supposed immortality for the millennia to come. For his time, Vitiate's specialty and power in force lightning was unrivaled, hence his sorcery. He devised complex rituals to warp reality and life itself, and as I stated earlier, he also used the ritual of Nathema to fuel his immortality. Lord Scourge, who would be later named the Emperor's Hand, suspected that the Emperor had not only absorbed the life and force essence of all corporeal beings and force-sensitive entities on the planet of Nathema that day, he was in fact speeding off their spirits to sustain his own life throughout the centuries that followed, with this thought devastating his mind and bringing him to a harsh and terrifying thought. As the Emperor, he spent much of his rule experimenting even further with complex dark-side rituals, discovering many lost techniques and increasing his immense power even further, delving into the fear and suffering. He felt no emotion to those he killed, no emotion. The Emperor made extensive use of force lightning during combat, while his body was harmed by the ravaging effects of the dark side, as would see with Palpatine when he tried to transfer his essence, the ability created by Darth Andedu all those millennia beforehand, into the vessel known as Snoke, the puppet leader of the First Order. He was unable to, as Snoke's body began to decay and deteriorate the moment that his immense dark side power entered into his form. However, he still manipulated Snoke into a powerful puppet nonetheless. This technique of essence transfer pioneered by Andedu allowed him to move his consciousness between vessels, which had been made eternally immortal as a result of the ritual of Nathema, between bodies, and sustain his life indefinitely. By combining various force techniques, the Emperor was also able to imbue portions of his consciousness into infants. He most famously utilized this ability when taking and dominating the spirit and will of Emperor Valkorion, a Zakulian warrior, and who he would later on take the form of, in order to create the Eternal Empire and rule Zakul before he was inevitably betrayed and killed by his son Arkan, shortly after killing his brother Thexan in a flash of dark side power and might. The Emperor also, throughout his lifetime, encrusted many portions of his spirit into infants. He could suppress the child's personas and will, even their force sensitivity, making them the ultimate covert operatives and operation agents, and further possess them like puppets on a string. His mind control powers at this point were far beyond anyone else in all of Sith and Jedi history, being easily and effortlessly able to dominate any being. He was even able to dominate the will of the renowned Jedi Revan and Malak, turning them both into Dark Lords of the Sith, who he then went on to later control until they eventually broke free from his control, proving that as strong as his will was, it still could be suppressed. The main reason that the Sith Emperor Vitiate imbued portions of his consciousness into infants was in the unlikely event that he was killed, like in his duel with the hero of Tython, or with the Outlander Arkan and Thexan in the body of Valkorion. He could retreat to their vessels and use them as a host while he amassed his power yet again. Vitiate's ultimate goal was to repeat the ritual of Nathema, this time using the entire galaxy. And later in this channel's history, I'll be creating a video in depth on the ritual of Nathema, so stay tuned for that when it inevitably rises to prominence on our channel. The Emperor's rituals on Droman Cast, his capital world, and location of the Imperial Citadel and Dark Council warped the planet's very atmosphere, creating perpetual and blinding lightning storms and strikes. He became vastly skilled in the area of telekinesis and defensive techniques, despite him being one of the most powerful and proficient Sith Lords in offensive techniques. He could conjure force barriers effortlessly strong enough to block T3's M4's flamethrower, the droid that Revan utilized through most of his tenure as a Jedi and afterwards. He could even block strong lightsaber blows from his son Arcan, and could conjure protection bubbles to protect himself from an oncoming force assault, creating a force barrier to shield himself for any force-based attacks. His telekinetic prowess and unlimited power was so great, he could effortlessly and easily perform great telekinetic feats without utilizing hand gestures, which was commonly needed with regards to force fields. He was able to easily send the extremely powerful Revan flying across his throne room with barely an effort. He effortlessly disintegrated T3-M4 with just a mere thought, like he did with his stepfather many years prior. He blasted the astromech droid into shrapnel, proving his prowess in the ability had improved greatly. And Revan was no mere acolyte either. Revan, similar to Vitiate, was a Force prodigy. However, Vitiate was obviously and clearly the superior to Revan, undoubtedly his superior, and always ahead of him. The Emperor was also extremely proficient and undoubtedly the greatest of his time in the usage of Force lightning, being able to send a crackling storm of dark side energy in the host body of Valkorion just minutes before his death to kill Darth Maul, a Dark Councillor who had held on to his seat for over 40 years, acquiring it when he was in his 20s, noted as the most powerful Dark Council member to ever live. He could create crackling bolts of electricity without even being proficient enough to single-handedly summon force storms. Not the force storms like the hyperspace wormholes, but force storms gathering Sith energy and dark side power strong enough to overwhelm Revan's Tutaminis. Tutaminis, in fact, was an ability commonly used by Grandmaster Yoda. Tutaminis was the art of mainly deflecting force attacks from the Sith back to the Jedi. The Jedi utilized this most notably in Revenge of the Sith, where Yoda, while dueling Emperor Sheev Palpatine, the newly christened Emperor of the Galaxy, in the Senate chambers, unleashed a barrage of Force lightning at the Grand Master of the Jedi Order. Yoda used Tutaminis to block it, and eventually he and Palpatine were sent hurling down the chamber, with Yoda only losing the fight due to the fact that he was smaller in size and stature and was flung back a far more considerable amount. Vitiate could also summon considerable force storms, even greater than his current ability as the Sith Emperor. He was able to summon even greater force storms as Valkorion. He was able, as I said earlier, to overwhelm Revan's exceptionally strong Tutaminis, which had previously, in his Revan Old Republic novel, been able to block and redirect the force lightning of Darth Nihilus, a very highly respected Sith Lord. Vitiate used this and severely injured Revan, overwhelming his Tutaminis like it was playtime. The Sith Emperor Vitiate was also able to summon Sith magic to a considerable and unmatched degree, which enabled him to create physical duplicates of himself and doppelgangers while battling the hero of Tython in lightsaber combat to prevent himself from dying. When necessary, the Emperor would utilize his crimson-bladed lightsaber in combat, displaying adequate proficiency with the blade despite it being so powerful that he rarely used it. Now, this wraps up the full power of Tenebrae. What did you think of this video, Acolytes? And would you like to see any more of the Star Wars lore focusing on this ancient and nigh omnipotent Sith Emperor? Although he did not become a Force dark side god like he wished, he still left his mark on a now scarred and charred Star Wars galaxy. Goodbye, Acolytes, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away.
Yes, I've grown from a man to a god.
Padawans of the Jedi and slaves of the Sith, and welcome back to the embrace of the archives that our channel provides. I have been expecting you. If you're a lore expert on the Old Republic era of Star Wars and have studied the in-depth holocrons and unveiled the ancient manuscripts long lost to time, in other words, if you have played the Old Republic game, one of the greatest Star Wars games to ever be released, it is almost impossible, actually it is impossible, to go through that game without hearing of the legendary renowned Sith Lord and immortal Emperor Vitiate, his birth name being Tenebrae, known to the old Sith Empire in ancient scrolls and holocrons as Darth Vitiate, his reconstituted Sith Empire as the Sith Emperor, and his eternal empire as Valkorion, the immortal Emperor of Zakul, was an ancient dark side entity of enormous power who manipulated and controlled galactic affairs for 1,500 years. Unquestionably, the oldest living corporeal form Sith Lord of all time. But, as I stated previously, Tenebrae had 3 variations. His original form, which was Tenebrae, a Sith pureblood, with crimson skin and red tendrils protruding from his chin, nightmare black eyes that was like the void of space, and sleek back hair that would grow in his adulthood. After this, we have Darth Vitiate, the most well-known face of the Emperor, with eyes that still retain their black as the void of space texture, a hood slung over his head, a padding of armor placed upon his shoulders, and robes cushioned upon his dress in his honor. The Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Vitiate, and Immortal Emperor also adopted the Valkorion form, with the cool armor glistening with icy blue emittance, with a grey and later white polished beard that was cut to perfection. His eyes had returned to a normal orange and bloody fire tone. This would make sure that he was properly aligned with the dark side. However, throughout all these variations that Vitiate conjured from dark side alchemy, spells, and sorcery, which one of these variations was the most formidable? Which one could you never defeat in a fight? And which one could even match up to the strength of the Legends Continuity Grandmaster Luke Skywalker himself? Well, my friends, join us today on our flagship The Brainbusters as we delve into the in-depth and complex lore, uncover ancient holocrons, unveil long-lost manuscripts shrouded in mystery on the most powerful variation of Darth Vitiate. Before we begin, I would like to note that if you wish to ascend to the rank of Master, unlike Anakin Skywalker, we will not make the same mistake the council members did. All you must do is hit the subscribe button and strike down the like button. It is your destiny. Now, my friends, with that small dilemma out of the way, let's begin. Born in 5113 BBY as the illegitimate son of Lord Drumoth in the old Sith Empire, Tenebrae carved a path of destruction across the planet Medrias, which he would formerly and later name Nethema, torturing and massacring thousands by the age of 10 when Drumoth confronted him, his own birth father. Tenebrae severed his father's power and midichlorian count to the Force, and imprisoned his spirit for millennia of torment. Eventually, the current Dark Lord of the Sith, Marka Ragnos, one of the most powerful Sith of all time, recognized and acknowledged Tenebrae's immense dark side power, with a midichlorian count that was exceeding 25,000, even exceeding the potential of Anakin Skywalker's twin children, Leia and Luke Skywalker. Tenebrae was unquestionably one of the most powerful entities to ever grace the Star Wars universe, an abomination purely forged by the corrupting influence and power of the dark side, a destructor and destroyer of worlds. Vitiate was able to consume all life using a complex ritual known as the Ritual of Nethema, consuming all life on his home planet of Nethema, including the essences and life force, as well as the force powers of 8,000 well-trained fellow Sith Lords, binding their will to his in order to sustain his life for the many millennia to come. Vitiate held onto his throne in the Sith Empire for over 1,000 years, as Lord Scourge would comment in the Revan novel, a highly incredible good novel written by an incredibly talented author. This Revan novel painted Vitiate as the ultimate dark-side entity, as he only had trouble and suffered a minor injury when Revan funneled both sides of the Force in through his hands and into his body, unleashing the light and dark at the Master of the Sith and immortal Emperor of Zakuul. During his reign as the Sith Emperor Vitiate, he was eventually defeated by the Hero of Tython, remarked by many, including many Jedi and Sith, to be the most well-rounded and powerful Jedi of his age. Vitiate was cut down in a lightsaber duel, however his spirit endured, while his corporeal form was dead. The ritual that was performed on the Thema would last him and endure his spirit for many hundreds of years to come. In short, I put this variation of Vitiate during his Sith Emperor attire as Darth Vitiate, despite his proficiency in gathering a storm and influence of dark side energy, influencing thousands, possibly even tens of thousands of Sith Lords such as Darth Malgus, Darth Vindican, Lord Scourge, and Darth Nihilus into submission, and even beforehand trapping 8,000 Sith Lords to his will, despite being in his youth at 110 years old, which was an incredible feat that not many Sith can attempt to. I have to rank this last in his 3 variations, as he lost to the Hero of Tython. He would later surpass the Hero of Tython in power tremendously, but considered he lost in his Vitiate corporeal form. I would consider this version of Vitiate as powerful and indomitable as the Emperor of the Sith is, the weakest variation of this Dark Lord. The next variation of Darth Vitiate, also known as Tenebrae, I would like to discuss today in this video is his Valkorion, appearing in the Knights of the Eternal Throne and Knights of the Fallen Empire expansion edition of the Old Republic game. Valkorion's power tremendously increased after his fall at the Hero of Tython, having formerly gathered his power on Zakuul by transforming it using ancient technology into a marvel of the galaxy. The Eternal Empire, which Valkorion commanded for a year, carved a path of destruction beneath and between the Sith Empire and the Jedi Order's destructive war, a conflict that would become to know as the Great Galactic War. The Eternal Empire, led by Valkorion, possessed the Eternal Fleet and a numerous amount of Force adepts such as Arcan, Thexan, Valen, and most notably and most powerfully, Emperor Valkorion, the immortal Emperor of Zakuul, is just shy of the #1 position today, as Valkorion, while he was the Lord, was able to curb and control both his son Arcan and Thexan's power, 2 beings with the highest Force sensitivity in Star Wars history, with a midichlorian count that was possibly around the count of 23,000, exceeding that of Sidious, and some have speculated to be even higher than this, on par with that of Starkillers at around 23,000. However, some believe this is an underestimation. Tenebrae, also known as Valkorion, in this form, had the ability to reduce and project massive storms and waves of dark side energy that were sent hurling at his opponents. He was able to effortlessly dominate the wills of multiple beings at once, including the Outlander, toying with Arcan, Valen, and the Outlander's Might, 3 of the most powerful Star Wars beings to ever live. He was able to send catastrophically powerful waves of Force lightning to attack and instantly kill Darth Maul, a Dark Council member who was widely considered to be the most powerful of all time, having retained his position from his early 20s into his late 60s, holding on to it for 40 years, more than any other reigning Dark Council member, and Valkorion was able to kill him instantly. In this form, he was able to create immensely powerful and nigh impenetrable Force shields, as shown when Arcan freed the Outlander and attempted to kill his father. He was able to block the lightsaber blows that Arcan induced upon him, saying that he had first killed his brother Thexan in a fit of rage, and now he was turning on his father. Valkorion, in this body, was eventually killed by the Outlander who stabbed him in the back after incapacitating Arkan with another tremendous storm of force lightning. Due to his feat, I will put Valkorion ranked number 2, heavily above the Emperor Vitiate form, but nowhere near the power that is incomprehensible compared to the number 1 spot. Now, if you are adept in reading Star Wars lore, uncovering old manuscripts, and unveiling the mysteries shrouding Sith holocrons, you will be aware that this ability and this form of Vitiate, Tenebrae, comes in at the number 1 position. Tenebrae, which was his most notable form during the Echoes of Oblivion expansion edition. Tenebrae was widely considered to be the most powerful Force user of all time during this time. However, we here at the channel believe that Nihilus barely surpassed this version of Echoes of Oblivion Vitiate. Echoes of Oblivion Vitiate has a tremendous amount of feats under his belt. Tenebrae, using his body, was able to reanimate and reincarnate both the Valkorion and Vitiate forms, unleashing a wave of red force power that was able to incapacitate and blow down the Outlander and all the beings that Tenebrae had wronged. However, it should be noted he was defeated by these beings upon them using their combined power to defeat his own oppressive might. This version was able to flatten a team of Valen, Arkan, Vexen, Senya, Revan in his prime, Kira Carson, Lord Scourge, Darth Maul, the Outlander, the Seums, Satil Shan, and her students, as well as many more. Vitiate, it was also able to drain the populations of Zeus and Nethema. It was widely considered by many Star Wars fans that this version of Vitiate was the most formidable and powerful, being able to send crackling bolts of red force lightning. The most powerful force lightning due to its association with Darth Vader at his peak of power during the Darth Vader comics, and the use of the Son of Mortis, the literal embodiment of the dark side and a perversion of the Force itself, similar to Darth Nihilus, a literal wound in the Force itself. Vitiate, in Echoes of Oblivion, was able to utterly dominate the mind of Satil Shan, the current reigning Jedi Grandmaster, and the granddaughter of Revan, one of the most powerful Jedi to ever exist. This was an incredible feat, as Vitiate and Satil Shan was widely considered to be 2 of the most powerful Force users at the time, with Satil Shan being the most powerful Jedi at this time, spare possibly the Outlander, who through the teachings of Darth Maul and herself was able to grow beyond the Force. Vitiate, in his Echoes of Oblivion formation as Tenebrae, his Sith pure-blood body, was unquestionably the most powerful variation of this dark side abomination and entity. Well, my friends, I hope you are enjoying the daily opening of Sith holocrons and uncovering the ancient lore that we strive here on the channel to excavate from the ancient tombs of the Masters. I hope you're enjoying this Vitiate content, as I am going to make a video entitled The Life of Darth Vitiate, or Tenebrae, and Valkorion, covering his entire life story. That will be coming in the near future, as Vitiate is one of my top 3 favourite Dark Lords of the Old Republic era, and one of my favourite characters in all of Star Wars, period. With that out of the way, acolytes, ensure you have ascended to the rank of Master by striking down the subscribe button. We won't make the mistake that Palpatine made and not educate you in the ways of the Force. With that out of the way, acolytes, I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away, and may the Force be with you. Win raid against Darth Vitiate. Please enjoy. Subscribe and like the video, please. Enjoy.
I've